The 7 beggars. Let me tell you how happy people once were. Once there was a king who had an only son. The king wanted to give the kingdom to his son in his lifetime. He threw a grand party, a ball. Whenever a king throws such a party, it is a great joy. But now, since he was giving the kingdom to his son in his lifetime, it was certainly a very joyous occasion. All the king's nobles, dukes, and officers were there, and they were all very joyful there. The whole nation was happy to see the king granting the kingdom to his son in his lifetime, for it was a great honor to the king. There was a very great rejoicing there. There were all types of entertainment, musical bands, dramatic plays, and the like. All sorts of joys were at this ball. When the rejoicing was very great, the king stood up and said to his son, "Being that I can read the stars, I can foresee that you will lose the kingdom. Nevertheless, see to it that you do not become saddened at your fall from the kingship. You must remain happy. When you will be happy, I will also be happy. If you will be sad, I will still be happy that you are not king. If you cannot maintain your happiness when you fall from power, you are not worthy to be king. But if you will be happy, I will have particularly great happiness." The prince took over the kingdom with a mighty hand. He appointed nobles, dukes, governors, and soldiers. The prince was wise, loved wisdom very much, and had very wise advisors. He highly valued anyone who came to him with a matter of wisdom. He would grant them honor and importance for their wisdom, each one what he desired. To someone who wanted money, he gave money, and someone who wanted honor, he gave honor, all in reward for wisdom. Because wisdom was so important to him, everyone began to be occupied with wisdom. The whole nation took to it. Some wanted to receive money in exchange for their wisdom, and others importance and honor, because all of them dealt only with wisdom. They all forgot the strategies of war, for they were involved only with wisdom. All the citizens became masters of wisdom. Even the most minor among them would be considered wiser than all in other countries. In another country, the master of wisdom in that country were wondrously great. The masters of wisdom in that country were wondrously great in wisdom. However, because of their wisdom, these masters became heretics. They drew the king's son to their thinking as well, and he also became a heretic. But the rest of the people did not fall into heresy. There was great depth in Subtly, there was great depth and subtlety in the wisdom of the masters, so the common people could not understand it and did not harm them. The masters of wisdom and the prince, however, became heretics. Yet because the prince had a good character, for he was born of good stock, and had good and upright qualities, he would occasionally reflect, where in the world am I, and what am I doing? He would sigh and moan that he had fallen to such depths and had strayed so far. He would sigh deeply, but as soon as he began to use his mind, the heretical thinking returned to him and became strong again. This happened many times. He would remember as described above, and would sigh and groan. But as soon as he started to use his intellect, the heretical wisdom returned and gained strength again. An entire nation once fled from its land. Everyone fled. In the course of their flight, they passed through a forest, and a boy and a girl were lost. One parent lost a boy, and another lost a girl. They were still young children, 4 or 5 years old. They did not have what to eat, and they screamed and cried out of hunger. After a time, a beggar approached them, carrying sacks of bread. The children started to approach him and follow attached to him. He gave them bread, and they ate. He asked them, "How did you get here?" They answered that they did not know, for they were young children. He began to walk away, and they begged him to take them with him. He answered them, "I do not want you to come with me." In the midst of this, they noticed that he was blind. It was a wonder to them. If he is blind, how does he know where he is going? In truth, it seems strange that such a question should occur to them, for they were still young children, but they were intelligent for their age, and it was a wonder to them, as was said above. Then he blessed them that they should be like him, old like him, and he left them some more bread and went on his way. The children understood that God was watching over them, and that he had arranged this blind beggar to come to them here to give them food. After they finished the bread, they again began to cry for the lack of food. Night fell, and they slept there. In the morning there was also nothing to eat, and they wailed and cried. Then a beggar passed by. He was deaf. They began to speak to him, and he motioned with his hands that he could not hear. He also gave them bread to eat, and left them. They asked him also to take them with him, but he refused. He also blessed them that they should be like him. He also left them bread, and went on his way. Once again, they finished the bread and began wailing again. Then another beggar came by. He stuttered. He stuttered. They began speaking to him, and he stuttered. They could not understand what he was saying. He could understand. He could understand them, but they could not understand him because of his stuttering. He also gave them bread and left them. He also blessed them that they should be like him, and went on his way. Then came a beggar whose neck was crooked, and the same thing happened as before. Then came a beggar with a hunched back. Then came a beggar without hands, and after that a beggar without feet. All of them gave them bread, and blessed the children that they should be like them, all as before. After that, they finished the bread and started to head toward civilization. They came to a path and followed it until they came to a village. They entered the house, and the people there had pity on them and gave them bread. Then they went to another house, and they also gave them bread. And they went thus from house to house. They saw that it went well for them, and they agreed that they would always stay together. They made large sacks for themselves and went from house to house and went to all the celebrations as well, such as circumcisions and weddings. Eventually they went to another town. They went to many cities, going door to door. They went to fairs and sat with the beggars, sitting on crates with collection bowls in their hands. These children became famous among the beggars. They all knew them and knew that these were the children who had been lost in the forest. One time, there was a big fair in a major city. All the beggars went there, and the two children went there as well. It occurred to the beggars that they should match the two children to be married to each other. As soon as a few of the beggars suggested this, it found favor in everyone's eyes, and the match was settled. But how would they make the wedding? They discussed the matter and decided that they would wait until the celebration of the king's birthday. All the beggars would go to the feast, and from whatever food would be granted to them, they would make the wedding feast. And so it was. All the beggars went to the king's feast and asked for bread and meat, and also gathered the bread and meat remaining after the feast. Then they went and dug a great pit, large enough for 100 people, and covered it with reeds, dirt, and refuse. Everyone gathered inside, and they held the wedding for the two children. They brought them under the wedding canopy. They were all very, very joyful. The bride and the groom were also very happy. Then they began to remember the kindness that God had done for them in the forest. They cried and longed intensely, saying, "How can we bring here the first beggar, the blind one, who brought us bread in the forest?" Immediately after they began longing for the blind beggar, he appeared, saying, "Here I am. See, I have come to the wedding, and I am giving you a wedding gift, that you should be all like me. At first I blessed you so, and now I am giving it to you as a gift, that you should live a long life like me. And you think that I am blind? I am not blind at all. It is only that all the time in the world does not count for me more than the blink of an eye." Thus he appeared blind, for he did not look upon the world at all, because all the time of the world was for him only the blink of an eye. Therefore, looking upon this world was not relevant to him at all. I am very old, yet I am still a young child, and I have not started to live at all. Even so, I am very old, and I do not say all this on my own. I have the approval of the great eagle. Now I will tell you a story. All these were the words of the blind beggar. One time, a large number of people set out in ships on the sea. A storm wind came and broke apart the ships, but the people were saved. They came to a tower and climbed to the top of it. There they found an abundance of food, drink, and clothing, everything they needed. There they had everything good, all the delights in the world. They agreed that each one should tell an ancient story that he remembers from his earliest memory, that is to say, what he remembers from when his memory first started to function. There were both young and old ones there, and they honored the oldest one to speak first. He said to them, "What can I say? I remember when they cut the apple from the branch." No one understood what he meant. However, there were wise ones among them, and they said, "This is surely a very ancient story." Then they honored the second one to speak. The second, who was younger than the first, said, "That is an ancient story. I also remember that story, but I also remember when the light was burning." The others responded, saying, "This story is even older than the first. It was a wonder to them that this second one, who was younger than the first, remembered a story older than the first. Then they invited the third to speak. The third, who was even younger, said, "I remember when the fruit began to take form." They responded, "This is an even older story." The fourth one, who was still younger, said, "I remember when they planted the seed from which the fruit grew." The fifth, who was yet younger, said, "I remember the sages who designed and produced the seed." The sixth said that he remembered the taste of the fruit before it entered the fruit. The seventh said that he remembered the odor of the fruit before it entered the fruit. The eighth said that he remembered the appearance of the fruit before it was drawn upon the fruit. And I, that is, the blind beggar who was telling all this, I was then a tiny infant, and I was also there. I said to all of them, I remember all of those stories, and I also remember nothing at all. They answered, saying, This is a truly ancient story, older than all the others. It was a great novelty to them that an infant would remember more than all of them. In the course of this, a great eagle came and knocked upon the tower, saying to them, Give up being poor, return to your treasures and use them. He told them to exit the tower according to their age. The oldest ones should come out first. He brought everyone out of the tower. First, he brought out the infant, for in truth he was older than all of them. Thus, all who were younger were brought out first, and the oldest man came out last. All who were younger were really older, as explained before. The oldest among them was the youngest of all. The eagle said to them, I will explain the stories that each one told. The one who said he remembers when they cut the apple from the tree meant that he remembers when they cut his umbilical cord. That is to say, he remembered what happened at the moment of his birth, at the time when they cut his cord. The second, who said he remembers when the light was burning, meant that he remembers when he was still in the womb, and the light was shining above his head. The one who said he remembers the time when the fruit started forming was referring to when the body started to be formed, the creation of the fetus. The one who remembered when they were bringing the seed to be planted meant the moment when the seed passed through during the intercourse of the parents. The one who said he remembers the sages who produced the seed meant the time when the drop of seed was still in the mind, for the mind produces the seed. The one who remembers the taste is referring to the vital life force. The fragrance refers to the spirit, and the image, the soul. But the infant who said he remembers nothing, that is higher than all else. He remembers what came before the life force, the spirit and the soul, the concept of nothing. The eagle concluded, Return to your ships, which are really your broken bodies, so that they be renewed and rebuilt. Now return to them. And with that he blessed them. And to me, the blind beggar who had been a child then, and who was telling all this, the great eagle said, You come with me, for you are like me, for you are very old and yet still very young. I am also so, for I am very old, and yet I am still young. This shows that I have the testimony of the great eagle, that I live a long life, and now I am giving you my long life as a wedding gift. And there were overwhelming, immense happiness and gladness. On the second of the 7 days of celebration, according to Jewish custom, the 6 days following the day of wedding are considered a continuation of the wedding, and on each day the couple and their friends participate in a festive meal. The couple thought about the second beggar, the deaf one, who had also given them bread in the forest. They cried and bemoaned, "How can we bring here the deaf beggar who sustained us?" As they were longing for him, he appeared, saying, "Here I am." He fell upon them and kissed them and said, "Now I am bestowing on you as a gift that you should be like me, that you should live a good life like me. At first I blessed you with this, but now I am giving you my good life as a full wedding gift. And you think that I am deaf? I am not deaf at all. Rather, the whole world is not worth anything to me that I should listen to what they are lacking. All voices come from lacking. Each one cries about what he lacks. Even all the celebrations in the world are due to lackings. One is joyful about a lack that has been filled. As for me, the whole world amounts to nothing that I should listen to their lackings. I live a good life that has nothing lacking, and I have testimony to this, that I live a good life from the country of wealth. His good life was that he ate bread and drank water. Then he recounted, "There is a country with great wealth that possesses massive treasures. One time the people gathered together, and each one boasted about his good life. Each one described the quality of his good life. I spoke up and said, 'I live a good life that is better than your good life. Here is the proof. If you really live a good life, let us see if you can save a particular country.' There was a country with a garden. In this garden were fruits with every kind of taste in the world. There were also all the varieties of scent in the world, all the varieties of images, all the colors, and all the spices, the species of flowers in the world, all in this one garden. Tending the garden was a gardener. Because of that garden, people of the country lived a good life. Then the gardener was lost. All that had been in the garden inevitably withered and died, since the overseer, that is the gardener, was gone. Even so, the people were able to survive from the weeds in the garden. Then a cruel king attacked this country. He could not do them any harm, so he went and ruined the good life that the country had had from the garden. Not that he ruined the garden, but he left three groups of servants in the country and ordered them to follow his instructions. As a result of what they did, their sense of taste was spoiled so that whatever a person tasted would have a taste of a rotten carcass. In the same way, they spoiled their sense of smell, so that all the varieties of scents smelled like galbanum, a foul-smelling plant. They also corrupted the sense of vision. They darkened people's eyes, as if there were dark clouds. This was all through what the servants did, following the commands of the cruel king. So now, if you really live a good life, let us see if you can save them. And I warn you, if you do not save them, what has befallen that country could befall you as well. These wealthy people went off to that country, and I went along with them. Along the way, each one of them lived his good life, for each one had his own treasures. As they neared the country, their sense of taste and other senses began to fail, and they realized what was happening to them. I said to them, if even before you have entered the country, your senses are already failing, what will be when you enter? And furthermore, how do you expect to be able to save them? Then I took my bread and water and gave it to them. They sensed in my bread and water all the tastes and all the smells, etc. Their damaged senses were restored. Meanwhile, the people of the country, which was the garden, began to consider ways to repair their spoiled senses. They concluded, it appears that our lost gardener, who helped us have a good life, is from the same root as these citizens of the wealthy country, who also have a good life. Let us send for help to this country, and they certainly will save us. They sent messengers to that country of wealth. Along the way, the messengers met the group from the wealthy country that was headed toward them. The wealthy travelers asked the messengers, "Where are you going?" The messengers replied, "We are traveling to the country of wealth so that they should save us." The wealthy ones answered, "We ourselves are from that country, and we have headed toward you." And we were headed toward you. Then I said to them, the deaf beggar said to the wealthy travelers, "Look, you need me. You cannot save them on your own. Stay here, and I will go with the messengers to save their country." I went with them. Once in the country, I came to a certain city. I saw people gathering and sharing various words of mockery. Then other people came along until it became a large crowd. All of them chattered words of ridicule and smiled and laughed. I focused I focused my attention more closely and heard they were speaking obscenities. One would say an obscenity, another would say the same in more refined language. Another would laugh, and another would simply enjoy it. Then I went onward to another city. I saw two people arguing over some business dealing. They went to court for a judgment, and the court ruled that one was guilty and the other innocent. Then they left the court and began arguing again. They said they did not want to accept that court and wanted to go to another. They chose another court, brought their case to the new court. This court gave them a ruling. Afterwards, though one of the defendants began arguing with someone else, and they chose yet another court. They went on bickering and squabbling with one with another, and continually chose new courts until the whole city was brimming with courts. I saw that all this was because there was no truth there. First, a judge would prevent the judgment and favor one over another. Then the one he had favored would favor him. Everything here was based on bribery, and there was no truth among them. Then I saw that they were full of sexual immorality. Their illicit sexuality was so commonplace that it had become completely acceptable to them. I told them that it was because of this that their senses of taste, smell, and vision had been corrupted. That cruel king had left behind 3 groups of servants, as mentioned above, and they went and ruined the country. The foul language they spoke spread among the people, and this corrupted the sense of taste, so that everything tasted like a carcass. They also brought bribery into the country, and this darkened the people's eyes, and their vision was corrupted. For bribery blinds the eyes of sages. Further, they brought sexual immorality into the country, and this corrupted the sense of smell. The country must be rid of these 3 sins, and must be sought after and expelled. Then, when you have cleared the country from these 3 sins, not only will the taste, vision, and scent be repaired, but also the lost gardener will be able to be found. They did accordingly, and began to purify the country of these 3 sins. They searched for the servants of the evil king. They would seize some man and ask him, How did you come here? Eventually, they identified all the servants and banished them. and they cleared the country of the 3 sins. Presently, a commotion arose. People started asking, could it be that this madman who goes about saying that he is the gardener, whom everyone thinks is mad, at whom they throw stones, and who has been driven out, perhaps he is the true gardener? They sent for him and brought him before them, that is, before those who had overseen the restoration of the country. The deaf beggar, who was telling the whole story, was also there. Upon seeing him, I said, that is undoubtedly the true gardener. Thus, I have the testimony from that country of wealth that I live a good life, for I repaired that country. Now I give you my good life as wedding present. Then there was very great joy and gladness. Thus all the beggars came to the wedding and gave their wedding gift, each one with what he had at first blessed them, now gave them as a gift. The first one gave them long life, and the second gave them good life. On the third day, the couple reminisced and began crying and longing. How can we bring the third beggar here, the one with the impaired speech? Suddenly he appeared, saying, here I am. He fell upon them and kissed them. Then he also said to them, at first I blessed you that you should be like me. Now I am giving it to you as a wedding gift. And do you think that I have a defect in speech? Not at all. It is only that the words of this world are not praises of God, lack perfection. Therefore he seemed to be speech impaired, could not speak the words of this world, which lack perfection. But in truth, my speech is not impaired at all. On the contrary, I am a wondrous orator and speaker. I can recite such wonderful riddles and songs that there is no one in the world who would not want to listen to me. These riddles and songs that I know contain all the wisdoms, and I have a testimony for this from the great man called the true man of kindness, and there is an entire story to this. Once all the sages sat together, and each one boasted of his wisdom. One of them boasted that with his wisdom he had invented iron, and another boasted of another type of metal. Another boasted at having invented silver, which is more valuable, and another one boasted about inventing gold. Another boasted about weapons of war, and another claimed he knew how to make metals through means of alchemy. Another boasted of other wisdoms, for inventions such as saltpeter, gunpowder, came to the world through wisdom. Each one boasted of his wisdom. Then one of them spoke up and said, I am wiser than you, for I am wise like the day. They did not understand what he meant by wise like the day. He explained, if all your wisdoms would be gathered together, they would not amount to more than an hour, even though each wisdom is taken from a different day of the week, according to what was created on that day. All the wisdoms are only mental structures. Thus, a wisdom is taken from the day on which the phenomena which were perceived as a mental structure were created. Even so, it is possible through wisdom to gather all the wisdoms into 1 hour, but I am as wise as an entire day. All these were the words of the last sage who spoke. Then I spoke up and said to him, that is, the one with the speech defect, said to the last sage, like which day? The last sage answered, this one is wiser than me, because he asked like which day. All the same, I am as wise as any day you choose. Now it may seem difficult. How could the one who asked the question be wiser if the last sage was as wise as any day you could choose? For this, there is an entire story. There is a true man of kindness, who is in fact a very great man. I, the one with the speech defect, go and gather all true kindness, and brings it to this true man of kindness. Time is principally created by these acts of true kindness, for time itself is a creation. And there is a mountain. On it stands a stone, and from the stone flows a spring. Now, everything has a heart. The world itself, in its entirety, also has a heart. This heart of the world is a complete body, with a face and hands and feet, etc. But the toenail of the foot of this heart of the world has more heart than the heart of anything else. This mountain with the stone and the spring stands at one end of the world, and the heart of the world stands at the other end. This heart stands facing the spring and continually yearns very intensely to come to the spring. It cries out passionately with an overwhelming yearning to come to the spring. Also, the spring yearns to come to the heart, but this heart has two causes of weakness. One, the sun pursues it and burns it, for it longs and desires to go and be by the spring. The intensity of its yearning and longing with which it constantly desires, longs, and cries out for the spring, for it stands always opposite the spring, and moans and craves for it constantly, causes its soul to expire. When it needs to rest a bit, so that it will regain its breath, a great bird comes and flaps its wings upon it, and protects it from the sun. Then it has some relief. Even then, in its moments of relief, it gazes at the spring and longs for it. So, if it longs so passionately for the spring, the question can be asked, why does it not go there? The answer is, when it wants to go and approach the mountain, it loses sight of the slope and cannot see at the spring. And if it ceases looking at the spring, it will die, for its primary life comes from the spring, when it stands opposite the mountain. Then it sees the face of the mountain, in which lies the spring. But as soon as it tries to approach the mountain, it loses sight of the mountain face. This can be understood from simple experience. Then it would not see the spring, and its soul would expire. Heaven forbid. And if this heart were to die, the entire world would cease to be, for the heart is the life of all things. Certainly there is no existence possible without the heart, so it cannot go to the spring. Therefore, it stands opposite it, and yearns and cries. Now, this spring is beyond time, for it is not within time at all. The only time that the spring has is the one day that the heart gives it as a gift. When the day draws to a close, and when the day ends, the spring will run out of time and expire. God forbid. And then the heart will die. God forbid. And then the whole world will be annulled. Will be annulled. God forbid. The spring and the heart bid each other farewell, and start to recite beautiful riddles and songs to each other, with great love and very powerful yearning. The true man of kindness oversees this. Then, when the day comes very near to its end, and the true man of kindness gives one day as a free gift to the heart, then the heart gives the day to the spring, and then the spring has time again. When the day emerges from its source, it also goes with magnificent riddles and songs, containing within them all the wisdoms. And there are differences between the days. There are the distinct days of the week, and then there are the days of the new moon and the festivals. All the time of the true man of kindness comes through me, the beggar with the impaired speech, who was telling all this. I go and gather all the true kindness, from which time is created. Therefore, he was wiser than the previous sage, who was wise as any day one would choose, for all time and days are created through him. The one with the impaired speech, who gathers all the true kindness from which comes time, and brings them to the true man of kindness. The true man of kindness gives a day to the heart gives it to the spring, and through this the world is sustained. Thus, the creation of time, with the riddles and songs containing all the wisdoms, is all through the one with the speech defect. Thus, I have the testimony from the true man of kindness, that I can recite riddles and songs containing all the wisdoms, for all the time with the riddles and songs comes into being through me. And now I give it to you as a complete wedding gift, that you will be like me. There was very great joy and gladness after this. When the celebration of that day ended, they slept the night. In the morning, they began yearning again, this time for the beggar with the crooked neck. In the midst of this, he suddenly appeared, saying, "Here I am. At first, I blessed you that you should be like me. Now I give it to you as a wedding gift, that you should be like me. And you think my neck is crooked? It is not crooked at all. To the contrary, I have a very straight and beautiful neck. It is only that there are vapors in this world, and I do not want to exhale any breath into the vapors of the world." Thus his neck seemed crooked, for he twisted it away from the vapors of this world, and did not want to exhale any breath into them. Yet in truth I have a very beautiful and wondrous neck, for I have a wonderful voice. All the voices of the world, voices without words, I can produce all of them with my voice. I have a remarkable neck and voice, and I have testimony to this from that country. There is a country where they are experts in the discipline of music. Everyone there is involved with it. Even young children. There is no children there who cannot play an instrument. The youngest child there would be considered a great master of music in another country. The sages and the king of that country and the members of the musical bands are all great masters of this discipline. One time, all the sages of the country gathered together, and each one boasted of his musical talent. One said he knew how to play on such and such an instrument, and another boasted about his ability to play another, and so on. One claimed he knew how to play several instruments. Another claimed he knew how to play all the instruments. One said he could create the sound of a certain instrument with his mouth, with his voice, and another that he could create that of a different instrument with his. Yet another boasted he could create the sound of several instruments with his voice. One claimed that he could create the sound of a drum with his voice. Another said he could create the sound of a harp. I was also there, and I said to them, "My voice is better than yours. Here is the proof. If you are such masters of music, see if you can save these two countries." These two countries are 1,000 miles apart from each other. In both of these countries, when night falls, it is impossible to sleep. When night comes, they all begin to wail, men, women, and children. The sound could melt a stone. In the night, they hear a sound of very intense wailing, and because of this, everyone wails, the men, women, and children. So it is in both of the countries. So it is in both countries, even though the two countries are 1,000 miles apart from each other. Now, if you are all such great masters of music, let us see if you can save these two states, or if at least you can produce those sounds. That is, to imitate the wailing sound heard there. They asked the one with the crooked neck, "Would you take us there?" He answered that he would, so they all became inspired to go. They set out at one of the two above mentioned countries and arrived. Night fell, and everyone began wailing, as recounted above. The sages also joined in the wailing, and they realized from this that they could not save the countries. Then the one with the crooked neck said, "At the least tell me from where does this wailing sound come?" They asked him, "And you know?" He said, "Certainly I know. There are two birds, a male and a female, and they are the only ones of their species in the whole world. The female was lost, and the male went looking for her, and she searched for him. They searched for a long time until they lost their way and saw that they would not be able to find each other. They decided to stay where they were and made nests. The male above made its nest close to one of the above countries, not actually adjacent, only close enough so that the voice of the bird could be heard in the country. There it made its nest. The female made her nest adjacent to the second country. When night falls, the two birds start wailing with an intense cry, each one wailing for its mate. That is the wailing sound that is heard in these two countries. And because of that sound, everyone wails, and no one can sleep. However, they did not want to believe him and asked, "Will you take us there?" He answered that he could lead them there. "However, you cannot go there. When you come near, you will not be able to bear the wailing sound. Even here you cannot bear it, and you all join in with the wailing. When you get there, you will not be able to bear it at all. Even by day it is impossible to go there, because it is impossible to bear the joy that is there. In the day, many birds gather around each of the two birds, and they console and cheer them with very great encouragement and joy, telling them consoling words that there is still hope of finding the other. It is thus impossible to bear the intensity of the joy there during the day. The voice of the birds who encourage them cannot be heard from a distance, only when one comes near, but the wailing of the couple in the night can be heard from afar. It is impossible to go there because of this. Then the sages said to the one with the crooked neck,
can you repair this?" He answered, "I can, for I can produce all the sounds in the world. I can also throw sounds. That is to say, I can utter a sound in such a way that in the place where I am, it will not be heard at all, and only in the far distance it will be heard. Thus, I could throw the voice of the female bird so that it would reach the place where the male is. Likewise, I can throw the voice of the male so that it will reach the place of the female, and I could lead them to each other through this, and through this all the rest would be repaired. However, since who would believe this, so he led them to a forest. There they heard the sound of someone opening a door, closing it, and locking it with a bolt. They heard the bolt slam shut. Then they heard him shooting something from a rifle and sending a dog to fetch what he had shot. The dog thrashed about and scrambled ahead through the snow. The sages of music heard all this and looked around, not seeing anything. Neither did they hear a sound coming from the one with the crooked neck. He threw all these sounds that they heard without perceiving their source. They saw clearly that he could create all these sounds and throw them. Thus, he would be able to repair the situation described before. Thus, I have testimony from that country that I have a very wondrous voice, and I can create all the sounds of the world. And now I am giving this to you as a wedding present, that you should be like me. There was very great joy and gladness. On the fifth day, they were also very happy. Then they remembered the beggar with the hump. They longed passionately, saying, "How can we bring that hunchback beggar here? For if he were here, the joy would be very great." In the midst of this, he appeared, saying, Here I am. I have come to the wedding." He fell upon them, hugging and kissing them. He said to them, "At first, I blessed you that you should be like me. Now I am giving this to you as a wedding present. I am not a hunchback at all. To the contrary, I have such shoulders that they are an aspect of the small which holds within it the great. And I have a testimony to this. There was once a discussion in which people were boasting of their ability in this respect. Each one claimed that he possessed the power of the small which holds within it the great. There was one that they ridiculed and laughed at, but the others who boasted of this quality were accepted. However, I possess this quality to a degree greater than all of them. One of them claimed that his mind was something small containing the great. He carries in his mind thousands upon thousands of people, with all their needs and customs, and all their being and movements. He carries it all in his mind. He is thus the small that contains within it the great, for his mind carries so many people, as described above. They laughed at him, saying that his people were nothing and he was nothing. Then another spoke and said, I saw an example of the small that holds in it the great. Once I saw a mountain upon which was heaped much garbage and waste. It was a wonder to me how so much garbage came to be on this mountain. There was a man standing near the mountain, and he said, All that waste came from me. That man dwelled next to the mountain, and continually threw upon it the remains and excrement. He despoiled the place until the waste and excrement piled up on the mountain. Thus, this man is the small that holds within it the great, for it was from him that the garbage grew to such a degree. Another one boasted that he had the quality of the small which holds the great. He owns a piece of land that produces a great deal of fruit. When they calculated the amount of fruit it produces, they saw that there is not enough room in that country to contain all the fruit. Thus, it is a case of the small which holds the great. This found favor in the eyes of the others, for this was truly an example of the small which holds the great. Another one said that he had a very amazing orchard, in which there are fruits, etc. Many people and noblemen travel there, for it is a very beautiful orchard, especially in the summer. Many people go there on leisure trips there. However, the orchard does not have that much space to hold so many people. Thus, it is an example of the small which holds the great. This also found favor in their eyes. Then there was one who said that his speech is a case of the small which holds the great. He is the secretary of a great king. Many people come to him, one with praises for the king, another with requests, and so on. Clearly, it is impossible for the king to listen to all of them. He is able to gather all their words into brief summaries, and to tell these summaries to the king. All the praises and requests of the people are included in his words. All the multitude of their words are alluded to within the few words of the secretary. Thus, his speech is the small which holds the great. One said that his silence was the aspect of the small which holds the great. There are many accusers and gossipers who are maligning him, very seriously, but he answers them all through his being silent alone. Thus, his silence is the small which holds the great.
Another one said, he is a case of the small which holds the great. There is a poor man who is blind, and very large. He, though the one who was speaking, was very small, and he leads the larger man. Accordingly, he is the small which holds the great. If the large blind man were to walk alone, he could slip and fall. This small man holds him and leads him. Thus, he is the small which holds the great, for he is small, and he supports the large blind man. And I, that is, the hunchback who was relating all this, was also there. I said, in truth, you all have an aspect of the small which holds the great, and I understand all the import of your words. The last one, who boasted of leading the large blind man, is greater than all of you, but I am completely beyond all of you. The one who said that he leads the large blind man meant that he leads the moon, which has the aspect of blindness. It does not generate its own light, and it does not have anything of its own. He, the last one who spoke, leads the moon even though he is small, and the moon is very large. He sustains the entire world, for the world needs the moon. Thus, he is truly the aspect of the small which holds the great. However, the aspect of the small which holds the great that I possess transcends all of you. Here is the proof. Once there was a group which was investigating the fact that every animal has a particular shadow within which it prefers to rest. Similarly, there is a specific shadow for every animal. Every animal chooses for itself a particular shadow in which it prefers to lie. Also, for each bird, there is a particular branch on which it prefers to dwell. The investigators searched to find a tree under which all the animals would find a place to rest, one which all the animals would choose and desire to dwell in its shade, and on its branches all birds would dwell. They discovered where there was such a tree, and wanted to go to that tree, for the magnificent delight that one would have beside that tree is impossible to imagine. All the birds and all the animals are there, and no animal would cause one any harm. All the animals mingle and play there together, and surely it is a very great delight to be by that tree. Then they investigated which direction to follow in order to reach the tree, and they fell into disagreement about it. There was no conclusive answer. One said,
they needed to go east, another said west. One said this way and one said that way. They could not come to a conclusion about which direction to take to reach the tree. Then one sage came and asked, "Why are you searching for which direction to go to reach the tree? First of all, determine who is worthy of going there, for not everyone is able to go to that tree. Only those who have the qualities of the tree can go. This tree has 3 roots. One of them is faith, another is awe, and the third is humility. The trunk of the tree is truth, from which extend the branches. Thus, only one who has the qualities of the tree can go there." Now, this band of investigators as very close-knit, and they were not prepared to separate from each other, some making the journey and some staying. However, not all of them were fit to go there, for only some of them possessed these qualities. Thus, they postponed going, giving the others time to strive and struggle to achieve the qualities needed, so that everyone would be fit to go to the tree. When everyone had achieved the needed qualities, everyone came to the same idea, and they all agreed on one route to follow to reach the tree. And they all agreed on one route to follow to reach the tree, and they all went. After a while, they saw the tree from afar. Then they took a better look and saw that the tree was not standing in space at all. It did not exist in space. And since it did not exist in space, how were they to get to it? I, the hunchback, was also there with them. I said to them, "I can bring you to the tree. That tree has no place at all, for it is entirely beyond space." Whereas the concept of the small that holds the great is still within the realm of space. It always takes up some space, only that it is a very small space which contains much within it, but it is a space. Nevertheless, however, the aspect of the small which holds the great, which I possess, is at the very end of space, beyond which there is no space at all. Therefore, I can take you all to the tree, which is beyond space entirely. This hunchback was the connection point between space and beyond space. He possessed the uttermost extent of the small which holds the great, the absolute end of space, beyond which there is no space at all. From this point and beyond is entirely beyond. Thus, he could take them out of the realm of space to the realm of beyond space. I took them, and brought them there to the tree. Thus, I have the testimony from that band of people that I have the uttermost quality of the small which holds the great. This is why he appeared a hunchback, for he carried a great weight, for he was the aspect of the small which holds the great. And now I give this to you as a gift, that you will be like me. And there was great joy and abounding gladness. On the 6th day they were also joyful, and they longed, how can we bring here the beggar without hands here? Suddenly he appeared and said, here I am. Look, I have come to the wedding. He continued speaking to them as the other beggars, and kissed them. Then he said, you think that I am deformed in my hands? I am not deformed at all. In truth, I have the full use of my hands. It is only that I do not use the power in my hands in this world. I need that power for another matter, and I have testimony to this from the castle of water. One time, several people sat together, and each one gloried in the power of his hands. One said that he had such and such might in his hands, and another said he had another specific might in his hands. Each one boasted of the might in his hands. Then one boasted that when he shoots an arrow, he can retrieve it. He has the power in his hands that even after he has already shot the arrow, he can still bring it back to him. I was also there, and I asked him, what kind of arrow can you bring back? There are 10 types of arrows and 10 types of poison. When one wants to shoot an arrow, he dips the tip in a certain poison. There are 10 types of poison. When one dips the arrow in one poison, it harms to a certain degree. And when one dips it in another poison, it harms more severely. Thus, there are 10 poisons, each more deadly than the other, than the one before. That is what is meant by 10 types of arrows. The arrows themselves are all the same, but because of the various poisons applied to them, which are 10 in number, they are referred to as the 10 types of arrows. Thus, I asked him which kind of arrow he could retrieve. I also asked him if he could only bring back the arrow before it reached its target, or also after. He answered, I can retrieve it even after it reaches its mark. As to which type of arrow he could retrieve, he answered, I can retrieve one type of an arrow. I said to him, if so, you cannot heal the princess, for you can only retrieve one type of arrow. Therefore, you cannot heal the princess. Another one boasted of having this power in his hands. that whenever he takes or receives from someone, he is actually giving to him. That is to say, in his very taking and receiving, he gives, for his receiving is giving. He is thus a great giver of charity. I asked him, "What type of charity do you give?" For there are 10 types of charity. He answered that he gives tithes. He gives tithes. I answered, "If so, you cannot heal the princess, for you cannot reach her place at all. You can only penetrate one of the walls that surround her, and thus you cannot reach her place." Another boasted of having the power in his hands over those appointed to supervise the world. Each one needs wisdom, and with his hands he can bestow wisdom on them by laying his hands on them. I asked him, "Which wisdom can you bestow with your hands?" He answered, "Such and such a wisdom." I said to him, "If so, then you cannot heal the princess, for you cannot diagnose her pulse. You can only know one pulse, but there are 10 types of pulse, and you can only know one pulse, for you can only bestow one wisdom with your hands." And another boasted that he had such power in his hands that when a storm wind arises, he can block it with his hands and adjust the force of the wind so that it will blow appropriately. I asked him, "Which wind can you grasp with your hands?" For there are 10 types of winds. He answered, "Such and such a wind." I answered, "If so, you cannot heal the princess, for you can only play one melody before her. There are 10 types of melody, and melody is what will heal her. But you can only play one of the 10 melodies." Then everyone asked me, "What is your ability?" I answered, "I can do what the rest of you cannot. That is, the remaining 9 parts that you cannot achieve. From each of the previous examples, I can achieve. For there is a story. Once there was a king who desired a princess and tried various schemes to capture her. Finally, he succeeded in capturing her. One time, the king dreamed that she stood over him and murdered him. He awoke, and the dream sank into his heart. He called to all his dream interpreters, and they interpreted the dream literally. They told him that the dream would come true, and that she would murder him. The king could not find a solution what to do with her. He could not bear to kill her. To send her away would vex him, for another man would take her. That would really anger him, for he had sought after her with such effort, and now she would go to another man. Also, if he sent her away and she married another, the dream of her killing him could certainly come true, for she would be with another. Yet, He feared to keep her because of the dream. He did not know what to do with her. In the meantime, his love for her slowly waned because of the dream, and over time it continued to wither. Her love for him also soared more and more soured more and more until she hated him, and finally she fled from him. The king sent servants to search for her. They returned to him, saying that she was near a castle of water. There is a castle of water, and it has 10 walls, one inside the other, all of them of water. Even the floor one treads on, inside the castle is made of water. There are trees inside bearing fruits, all made of water. The beauty and novelty of the castle does not need to be told. It is undoubtedly a very awesome novelty, being that it is all made out of water. It is impossible to enter this castle. Anyone attempting to enter would drown, for it is entirely of water. Now the princess fled to this castle, and she began circling it. The king was told that she was circling the castle, so the king and his soldiers went to capture her. When she saw them approaching, she decided to run into the castle. She preferred drowning in the water over being caught by the king and having to be with him. Besides, perhaps she would survive and manage to enter the castle. When the king saw that she was fleeing into the water, he decided, considering the situation, to tell his men to shoot her, and if she died, she died. They shot at her, and she was struck by all the 10 types of arrows with the 10 types of poison. She escaped into the castle and passed through the gates of the 10 walls of water. There are gates within those walls, and she passed through all the 10 walls of the castle of water until she reached the innermost chamber and collapsed, remaining in the castle, in a state of great weakness. And I heal her, that is, the one without hands, one who does not possess the 10 types of charity cannot enter the 10 walls of the castle, for he would drown in the water. Thus the king and his soldiers chased after her and drowned in the water. But I can enter all the 10 walls of water. Now these 10 walls of water are the waves of the sea that stood as a wall. The winds pile up the waves of the sea and hold them upright. These waves are the 10 walls that stand there at all times. Yet it is the winds that stand them upright. I can enter all 10 walls and draw out all the 10 types of arrows, and I know all the 10 types of pulse through my 10 fingers. With each of my 10 fingers I can trace a specific pulse of the 10 pulses, and I can heal her through the 10 types of melody. Thus, I heal her. Therefore, you see that I have this power in my hands. Now I am giving it to you as a wedding gift. And there was overwhelming joy and gladness. Rabbi Nachman concluded, "This story is very hard for me to tell. However, since I have started to tell it, I must finish it." Note: this story has not one word in it without meaning. One who is learned can perceive some of the allusions. For example, the one who can shoot arrows and retrieve them has its basis in a passage from Deuteronomy 42. My hand grasps judgment. Rashi comments, a human being shoots an arrow and cannot return it, but God can shoot an arrow and retrieve it. The one who could grasp winds in his hands, alluded to in Proverbs 30, who gathered the winds in the palm of his hand. The 10 types of melody and the 10 pulses are discussed in Likutei Tinyana, chapter 24. We did not merit to hear the end of the story about what happened on the seventh day with the beggar without feet. He said he would not reveal it. This is a great loss, for we will not merit to hear it until the coming of the Messiah. Speedily in our days. Amen. He also said, even if I knew nothing else aside from this story, it would also be a very great novelty. The story also speaks about several ancient holy sages, among them King David, the heart of the world. In the story of the heart and the spring refers to him. He stood at the edge of the world and cried out to the spring that flows out of the rock on the Temple Mount, as it is said in Psalms, chapter 61. From the ends of the earth I call when my heart is faint. Lead me to a mountain beyond my reach. Examine Psalms chapter 61 carefully, and you will find in it many references to the story of the heart and the spring. Add days onto the days of the king, for the spring continually needs another day to be added to its days. Thus I will sing to your name forever, to fulfill my vows every day. For every day he gives it, he comes with songs and melodies. I will take shelter under the cover of your wings. For when the heart needs to rest, a great bird comes and spreads its wings over it. Who can describe or relate? Who can estimate the smallest part of the tremendous revelations that flow out of the awesome secrets contained in this story? It is brimming with hidden meaning from beginning to end. Those with clear perception will find revelations from the allusions, each according to his capacity.